Paradox of Hope is, or should I say was, a VR-only single-player shooter with strong survival horror elements. It was made by one person, but despite this, it was surprisingly good. The game took heavy inspiration from the Metro series, with a post-apocalyptic universe based in the Soviet Union, with a dark, gritty atmosphere, and it was genuinely scary at times. Fuck. Shit. It had lamps that you could turn on or off, a lighter you used to burn webs and light the way, and a gas mask for radiator areas with filters that you have to remove and replace. You had a watch on your left wrist, giving you a time on how long the filter would last. There's no denying where the game took its influence from. Even the main menu music sounds very familiar. But the game was made from scratch by the developer. It doesn't use anyone else's work, so I was pretty surprised when I noticed that it was no longer available for sale on Steam. After going onto the developer's Discord, as a company that the developer doesn't want to name sent him a cease and desist, accusing the game of copyright infringement. I think we all know who sent the cease and desist, but the question is, why? Why would a company worth multi-millions decide to have a small indie, VR-only project removed? The game was Nick's livelihood, something that he'd been working on for years, and it was his only source of income. If an official Metro VR game is in the works, it's great news for VR players, but the reality is, this small project would have no impact on the sales of an official game. In fact, if anything, it would make Nick's game pretty much redundant, as I can't imagine many people buying this game over an official one, unless the developers of the official VR port don't do a good job. The company that shall not be named are just being short-sighted, as now, some people make a point of not even buying the official game in protest, and it could even get review bombed, especially if the story gets picked up by more mainstream gaming media. Let's look at more detail at Paradox of Hope and see how good of a game it actually was, and how Nix could potentially improve it for whatever his next game ends up being. The game has a single player story campaign, but the game was still in early access, so it wasn't finished with only 2 chapters. This took about an hour to complete. These were very well done though, with some nice pacing and level design. He absolutely nailed the atmosphere, and it really had me on edge, to the point where I had to whip out my knife because I had no bullets, and I ended up panicking, hitting something in my room. Come on then. Ah! Just hit something in my room. It had a linear level design, but it put little secret areas to explore, which rewarded you with extra health and ammo. The main meat of the game though was in the raids. This is a game mode where you go on runs through procedural levels to get loot, and then you have to get to an extraction point alive. If you survive, you keep your loot. If you die, you lose everything that's in your backpack. This was extremely well done, and it had bandits which weren't in the campaign, where you have the option to go stealth, as well as all the other horrible ghouls you get to experience in the main campaign. And let me tell you, even though it doesn't have the handcrafted scripted moments, it still has moments that will scare the living poop out of you. Jesus. So now that the game isn't available anymore, that doesn't mean that we won't see a VR game from this developer in the future, because what he's got is an excellent foundation that he can use to effectively reskin into something that won't get the blood-sucking hounds snapping at his heels. So let me throw my completely unwanted opinion into the mix, and what he should do next. First, obviously, he needs to strip out anything Metro-like, get rid of the post-apocalyptic Soviet story, the lamps, lighters, and gas masks. Basically anything that gives it the Metro feel. He should definitely keep the raid system. I was massively impressed with the way that he had this set up. You've got a merchant that you buy and you can sell from. To buy, you simply grab items from the shop and then you charge for it. To sell, you simply put things on the merchant's kiosk and they put the money into your account. The game had a reputation system, so you start with a pistol and some accessories like a flashlight or silencer, and you're given tasks by the merchant, like get 3 rolls of toilet paper, because as we've learnt from the past in real life, there's nothing more important than wiping your arse. As you do these tasks, you unlock new stuff to buy, like full auto rifles and upgraded backpacks so that you can carry more gear. You've also got your own little room with storage for your loot that you want to keep, and a workbench where you can upgrade your guns and clean them as they degrade with use. This is such a well thought out system, and you very quickly understand how everything works, and you can be on a raid really quickly, but it also has a nice bit of downtime sorting and selling your gear. I I've played Into the Radius and Ghost of Tabor, which have some similarities, but I find that these games are very system heavy and they're a little bit convoluted. I feel like Paradox of Hope struck a nice balance of having some depth, but most of your time will be spent on raids actually playing the game. It's got a full body with good RK and arms, good interaction on most things like turning valves and picking things up. There are a few tweaks which I'll mention in a minute. It uses a backpack system almost identical to the Saints and Sinner games. This works flawlessly, and the Halsey system is also very well done. I also thought the campaign was well done, with some nice pacing and set piece moments, but there are some things that I could critique and I'd like to see improved in his next game. First, the game has got voiceover work which is in Russian, with no English option, but you do get English subtitles. Now I can read, I promise, but there is a lot of dialogue at times, including voice tapes, and having to stop what I'm doing to read the subtitles just grinds the game to a halt. I ended up not listening to the tapes, and even the story voiceover, I would start to wander around and not pay attention. This wouldn't be such an issue, but sometimes they were telling me what I was supposed to be doing in the game, like in the first chapter, I needed to get a case and reach an extraction. Because I didn't read this, I ended up thinking that there was some equipment inside, and I struggled to try and open the case that I just needed to put in my backpack. There was also a moment that I got soft locked into the game, because I needed to burn some fungus type stuff blocking a door with a Molotov, but I didn't realise this, so I ended up using it on an enemy, and then afterwards I figured out what I needed to do, and ended up having to reload a save because there was only one Molotov to use. The final section of the game, where you had to call an elevator whilst fighting some critters, as I quickly ran out of fuel for my flamethrower, and I had no bullets for my gun, so I had to run around like a twat flipping switches. I mentioned some tweaks. I found the range for the distance grab too close. I found that I had to be pretty much grabbing the object to get it to pick up, and that meant having to literally bend down and pick stuff up off the floor. I'm lazy, and I don't have to bend down a lot. The gun handling is actually generally quite good, but I would prefer the magazine for the pistol to go into the gun a bit quicker, and it would be better if you didn't need your hand to be quite as close, as I feel like I'm going to end up hitting my controllers together when reloading. The doors on the filing cabinets were clunky at times, and could have a little seizure, and your hands could sometimes get funky when they collide with stuff. I also think that whilst he nailed the atmosphere, constantly being in the dark with a flashlight can get very tiring and repetitive. I think adding horror elements to his new game would be great, but it would be good if you had sections where you're in the light, just dealing with regular human enemies to break things up. Whatever Nix makes next, we should definitely support, as long as it's good obviously, and I'll make sure to let everyone know whatever he makes next. As always, thanks so much if you made it this far into the video, and an extra special thanks with sprinkles on top to my Patreon and YouTube members.